So yes, I'm ready. Oh, we're live.
Yep, we're going live now. Hold on, let me do my commercial. We gotta do our commercial. Sorry. If it would work. There you go. Welcome back. For those who are jumping on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe, and go and look at all our videos and like, share, and subscribe. For those who are on Facebook, welcome back. And for those of you who have just met us, who don't know who we are, we appreciate you coming. Especially when we have such a wonderful guest to talk to today. So my name is Nikki Pierre Grant, but you can call me Nikki because I know that name is kind of hard to pronounce. But don't call me Nikki right now because we have Chair Nikki Fried here. But my name is Nikki Pierre Grant. I'm co-host of Race and Races, and I'm going to take it away to Sandra. Go on, Sandra.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sandra Sheffred, the other co-host of Race and Races, and we're here. I'm so excited about this opportunity to speak to the Florida Democratic Party Chair, Nikki Fried, today. I was at a Broward County Democratic Party meeting yesterday, and I did make the announcement that we were coming on because, Broward has a lot of work to do. I mean, Broward was light blue the last time, and we need to darken that color. And I know that Chair Nikki Fried is the person that's going to help us do that. So I'm really excited about this opportunity because we really need to have a game plan. I'm here to tell me where I need to fit in and do what I need to do. And I hope all the listening audience is here to do the same thing. So we want to hear what, our chair is going to do for the party and how we're going to make some changes in 2024, because we absolutely need to make some changes in 2024.
Absolutely make the same time. And then I don't know if you all saw that our chair was up fighting the good fight up in state of Tallahassee, up at our state capitol.
Mm-hmm.
And she did not intend to get arrested, but she did for the cause. And we are appreciative that we have representatives out there making sure that our voices are heard and is out there talking and telling people this is what democracy looks like. So,
and our state senator, Lauren Book, was also there with her. So we got to acknowledge all the other strong women that's in this fight too.
Absolutely. So without further ado, we want to introduce our Florida Democratic Chair, Nikki Fried. Introduce yourself, Chair Fried. Let people know where you were, what you've done, where you're coming from, and how you became chair, and then we'll get into questions.
Perfect. Well, first of all, it's so good to see you ladies and to be back onto the show. It's always an honor to be amongst such other fierce women and fierce fighters for all of us. So again, I am Nikki Fried. I'm the chair of the Florida Democratic Party, born and raised in Miami. That's where the first thing I saw Sandra was when we were outside at Palmetto Senior High, where I went to high school. And of course, our newest Supreme Court Justice, Ketanji, was from there. So it was great to be there. But anyhow, so I grew up in Miami, then went up to University of Florida for any of my Gators that are watching. Went there for go Gators, all of us.
I'm a double Gator.
My daughter got into the University of Florida, so we're going to be Gators all the way.
Double Gator here. That's right.
Exactly. So I went there for my undergrad, my master's. I have a master's in campaigning and law school. And when I was at UF, I was the first female student body president in almost 2 decades. Then after graduating from law school, I went up to Jacksonville and I was practicing commercial litigation, which I hated every single moment of that. Loved Jacksonville, loved Duval, love all my friends in Duval who, don't forget, you've got your mayor's race elections on May 16th. So please make sure that you're making a plan to vote. This is an opportunity to flip back that county to a blue mayor, one of our largest U.S. cities that doesn't have a blue mayor in the country. So this is something that's really important to vote. So then after I left the firm, I went back down to Gainesville, where I was the public defender's office for 3.5 years, which made the arrest 2 weeks ago even more interesting when I was asked at the booking if this is the first time I've been arrested. So yes, I used to be on the other side of these conversations. But then moved back down to South Florida during the foreclosure crisis, and eventually representing homeowners. Eventually made my way to doing government relations, representing Broward School Board, representing patients and access to medical cannabis, and then representing an organization that was fighting for foster care children. 2018, I got frustrated with how politics works or doesn't work. And we were supposed to have a blue wave that year and a pink wave across the entire country. And I decided to do something really insane. And that is to run for statewide office as Commissioner of Agriculture. Everybody thought I was completely crazy. But we were able to win in that election cycle, where unfortunately the rest of the ticket did not, being the first female ever elected to Commissioner of Agriculture in the state of Florida, as well as the entire Southeast. And then spent 4 years as a member of our Florida cabinet, sitting one seat away from the most dangerous person to democracy in the country. And then I ran for governor and unfortunately was unsuccessful in my primary, but that definitely did not stop me fighting the good fight and continued to support down ballot candidates going into the November cycle. And then I did something even more insane, decided to raise my hand and say, yes, I will take over the Florida Democratic Party. Yes, I know the Titanic just hit an iceberg. Yes, I know I should not be jumping on to the Titanic after it hit the iceberg, but here we are. And I haven't slept since. So we have a lot of
Well, that's and thank you for giving that that brief bio, because I think it's important that people understand what the foundation of Chair
and all the things she did. It was a brief bio, but there was a lot happening and all that.
Yeah. So to create that foundation and present the foundation is key for us, Chair Fried, so people can understand what the background looks like and the challenges that you face as chair of the Democratic Party in Florida, especially with the supermajority at the state legislature. So I don't know, Sandra, if you want to go first with your questions. I know when we posted this interview, you had some questions that was listed. I don't know if you want to go through that question there, or if you want to kind of jump into something else. I can't hear you because you're on mute, sis.
Sorry. Yeah, no, if there's something you want to ask, you can go ahead. But I mean, because I'm definitely interested in, I have some things I want to, but if you have something top of mind, you can go first.
Well, I mean, our audience is already putting questions and comments in the chat about, unity and changes and all that other stuff. So seeing what we went through in Florida and one of the key things that kept on coming up is messaging, right? Yep. Our Democratic messaging, quite frankly, was trash and hasn't been up to par in order to get galvanized, because our party, believe it or not, is splintered in different directions. We have progressives, we have conservatives, and we are clashing somehow. But the messaging is what kind of pulls us together. So what are you doing as what is some of the things you're working on in terms of messaging for our state going forward, Chair Fried?
You're right, because that's part of the problem, that we are such a big tent. Yeah. And that so many different, views and ideologies and backgrounds come underneath the Democratic tent. Somebody actually said to me, "Don't we have, Florida Democratic, platform?" I was like, okay, sure. That sounds like a fantastic idea. Tell me the top 5 things. And if you talk to Democrats across the state, their top 5 things will be completely different. And it will be like 30 pages long. And so being able to really kind of hone in on kind of the drumbeat of what I've been hearing all across the state, and so it is going to be more concise. It is going to be about unity, because the amount of people that this Republican legislature and this governor has been doing is that he's been basically telling everybody that doesn't look like him, doesn't sound like him, doesn't pray like him, is wrong and should be ostracized. And so we're going to unite everybody together. So first of all, everybody mark your calendars, May 7th. We are going to be marching in Tampa. So the march is going to be on at 1:00 in Tampa, and it's going to be a huge unity rally. It is going to be, we are inviting everybody up. Everybody who has been engaged in all these fights, whether you are from Planned Parenthood, or you are from March for Our Lives, or Florida Rising, or a member of the D9, or if you are, part of NAACP or Equality Florida, whatever our unions, come and march with us collectively together. One message, one voice. Wear your colors, wear your letters, wear whatever shirts you want. But that's gonna be part of the messaging, is that we're going to stand and support one another and unite together for freedom and democracy. Very clear, very succinct. And at the underlining of it all is that right now, Florida has also become so unaffordable. No matter who you talk to, no matter what part of the state, You've got issues, whether it is property insurance, whether it is rent, whether it's access to healthcare. People can't afford to live here. And so we are seeing that is probably another reason why Ron's going as crazy as he's going, because he doesn't want to talk about all those issues, because he doesn't have a plan for them. He doesn't have a plan to solve them. So let's just blame everybody else. The last time that the government blamed people for other people's problems led to a very bad ending. And unfortunately, we are seeing a lot of rise of the hatred and the anti-Semitism and racism and bigotry and homophobia and you name it. And so we've got to create a safe space for people to feel safe and that we're going to unite. But the message is going to be very clear: democracy, freedom, in the economy.
Okay. So my question is going to be about this. I heard you say that if we ask, all the different Democrats to tell us, what their top 5 things are, they're going to be different, right? So I don't know if we should stick with the top 5, like why, but there are some things that we can all agree with, right? Like even if it's not top 5, even if you talk to the big tent, you're going to find 5 things that are of concern, right? And so that my question when it comes to that also relates to the messaging. Because for example, like healthcare, right? Just healthcare, the access to it, how much everything is costing, even if it may not make everybody's top 5, it's going to be on everybody's list. Those are like real things that we can talk about. So yes, we have this big tent. We have people who consider themselves liberals, conservative, Bernies, whatever, all these different names. But it's like, okay, no, we got to stop with the labeling and just go like, no, we need to address insurance, right? Because Florida, I don't know if they took the money, and I didn't know they took the money in terms of expanding Medicaid and all of those types of things. They're not doing it. But then when you go get medication, that's something that everybody has that problem. You could be the healthiest of persons, right? One day you go and your pressure's up, or you got a family member or a cousin or a child or somebody. But those are issues that we can stand on. Like, why isn't it that why can't we just forget about referring to ourselves as this big tent and say, no, we're going to stand on these issues that we all can agree that people are having problems with?
And we will. We absolutely will. I mean, because we all agree that, regardless of, your personal beliefs and decisions that you would make, everybody agrees that bodily autonomy is essential. So that is one issue. Healthcare, absolutely. Education. I mean, so there's core issues that we all can agree on and we have to fight for. And it's really going to be important for us to make sure that we're not playing defense. Democrats have been playing defense for way too long. The issues that are impacting the people of our state are issues that we have been championing on, for Medicaid expansion, for making sure that there is that right of choice, to making sure that our public education is funded, that everybody has equal opportunity for success because our education system is serving everybody. There are going to be those core issues that are going to rise up, and the environment too. I mean, because the environment is so important to the people of our state because of the tourism dollars and the inequities of our environmental hazards. We also know that too, that you look at the flooding, look at the flooding that just happened. That is something that we know is hitting the Black community in Broward County harder than it is hitting other parts of the city. And so there are going to be those things like the environment, because it is important to our coastal communities, but it's also very important to those that are not able to participate in environmental justice issues.
Right. And that's one of the things, like environment is one way to explain that, but that's also one of the things where they should have been telling people we need to support infrastructure, right? Because oftentimes people they hear about the infrastructure bill and they're like, it was going to be $3 trillion. I don't want that, right? And then you find out that, a lot of these cities don't have a place to, their drainage system isn't working, or, and that's
bridges are falling apart.
Right. And right. Roofs are falling in, and then now you got a whole mold problem. These are infrastructure things that needs to be part of the conversation. So some folks may not, think about it in terms of environmentalism, right? Some communities, they're like, listen, those are a bunch of tree huggers. That's not how they need to hear that message, but they may need to hear, that it includes environment, but they need to hear it from an infrastructure. Like you see, is because the drainage system in your city wasn't set up properly. That's an infrastructure issue. Now, if we, if we're, we're funding these, or you have a candidate that's willing to support this, and or as opposed to someone who thinks like that's something that they don't want, then people can relate to it that way. So I think I'm saying all that to say this, that we also need to find ways to communicate to different populations, right? Like some people are going to take that message from an environmental standpoint, and then others, you're going to be like, listen, you couldn't get in your apartment and your car flooded, and you thought that renter's insurance policy was going to cover the flooding, and it didn't, because you need a separate policy for that, right? So those are the kind of conversations we may need to,
and even to the other extent, and go to the other extreme. That the conversations that to have with the people that live on the coastal communities. Coastal communities are a little bit more affluent, because it's not cheap to go buy a house on, on the beach, but me too, but that 30-year mortgage isn't going to be there if they think that there's sea level rising and that these insurance companies aren't going to protect the mortgages for 30 years. So now you're able to hit the same conversation on infrastructure, on the environment. You can hit it from all spectrums, from those that financially can't afford it, to those who have to wake up and say, wait a second, if I don't engage, I'm going to be losing my net worth and value of property.
Well, look at the community in Sanibel. After we had that nasty storm, I think it was a hurricane. I can't remember, but those beautiful neighborhoods was on the golf.
Well, the bridge came down and they couldn't get off the island.
Those homes were destroyed. They were destroyed. So you're absolutely right. We can hit them all fronts. But the other question I have for me is one of the things that I was talking to Sandra, and I sent her a question. I was like, the questions have to be good when we're talking to Chair Freed, but I put Hood in by accident. And she was like, we could ask Hood questions.
We have some Hood questions too.
Yeah, some Hood questions too. So I have a friend of mine who is, her name is Mona Lisa Weber. You met her. She works with a lot of people on the ground. And I think you guys had that conversation. And now she's really becoming more politically engaged and really kind of teaching and, getting people to get vote, register to vote and all that. What is the messaging for that group? Because Sandra is correct in terms of we have different groups and how we need to approach them, but we really want to get that group out, because that group cares, and they're the most ignored, in my opinion, by candidates and elected officials, and not being in the space where there's conversations happening there. What is the Democratic Party doing, and what you think that the Florida Democratic Party should do to reach that group?
Be present. Be present, show up and listen, and I think that that's something that I'm going to work very fast. People keep saying, Nikki, you're a marathon, not a sprint. But right now it's a sprint, because we're playing catch up.
Absolutely.
And so that's the way I go to sleep at night and wake up the next morning, is I look at all of this as a sprint. And so part of the problem that we have been having is, and it's not just a Florida thing, but it is certainly something that needs to be fixed, is that too often candidates come, they need their vote, and they set up their campaign apparatus, and they do their door knocking, they go to their community events, but they aren't going deep into communities. They're not going there year round. They're not having those hard conversations. And sometimes it may be a hard conversation that you've got to be willing to be vulnerable into communities that you may not necessarily always see eye to eye with, or necessarily have as much relatability to, but you've got to go into these communities across the board year round, because look, at the end of the day, and this is also something that I've said, when people kept saying, I can't believe that after you lost the primary, you continued to be out there and show up. I said, because if you care about the issues and you care about the people, win or lose an election, that shouldn't change what's in your heart. And if you are going out there every single year, regardless if you're asking for their votes at that moment or later down the road, you've got to be creating relationships and trust. And so much trust has been broken between elected officials and the people that they serve. And I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, this is consistent. And so we as Democrats have to do better, because we are the ones who always say that we care about the people. We care about the people. Prove it, show up. And so that's something that I'm going to continue to be working with the local clubs and caucuses, to my local leadership, to our elected officials, and making them look. I had, as you said, Sandra, I got arrested with a leader book. So we got 2.5 hours of good girl bonding experience that night. And that's one of the things that she and I talked about, is that the elected officials need to be going back to the communities, all of the community, all year round, not just going to the ribbon cuttings, not just going to the chamber events, not just doing the things where you know there's going to be cameras around. You've got to go and be there. You know, what is that old saying? Like, you know more about a person when the cameras are off than you do when the cameras are on. Be present when the cameras are off, and listen to those conversations and be willing to adjust when necessary. But that's something that I'm going to try to instill in the Democrats. And part of my plan on victory is making sure we're doing year-round engagement.
Okay, so you talked about candidates. Okay, so I got two things. I got a couple things about the candidates. Like, there's a couple things that Democrats do that I think is wrong, right? And we're not dream killers. I'm gonna say it's wrong. I'm gonna say it's wrong. You know, we have like, so one of the issues that we tend to have, at least in this part of the county, is that we have too many people running for the same seat, right? Like, okay, so that's one, right? What are we going to do about that? And then candidate quality is another thing, because in some of those folks, I mean, in November, there were people in, you know, they were in bed by like 8:30, 9 o'clock, right? So if the race was that easy to lose, then there might have been, I think that was an issue of candidate quality. Like, what is it that you can do as chair, if it's anything you can do to, you know, maybe have some conversations with folks so we don't have 5 people running, splitting votes and, you know, showing this disunity. And then how is it that we're going to do better with recruiting candidates that are really in it for the right reason and is going to be consistent and show up, like you said, year round in certain communities?
So I think that the first problem was that back in the day when that used to happen, when you used to have, like, the Republicans do it. The Republicans never led a contentious primaries. They always, you know, find a way to make things work. And so there was a lot of backlash from the Democrats, you know, over the last few years of who made that request to sit down, and who do you tell to sit down, and why should a 65-year-old white man tell a 45-year-old white woman that she's not ready, you know? And so part of it is making sure that it's the right messenger on those conversations, and that it's people that are not doing it for fame and glory, but they're having that conversation because they're seeing the bigger picture. They're seeing what happens if you have such a contentious primaries. One, you're wasting resources that we don't have. 2, you're putting people against each other. So I have been saying since my election on February 25th that the internal fighting is over, that I will do everything in my power to make sure that we're no longer going after each other like that, that the cliques, especially, I mean, I love my Broward, but like,
talk about the cliques
has got to stop. And we haven't had a chair in a very long time who is willing to have those conversations and say, listen, not that this is not your time. Like, I will never tell somebody to not run, because
we're not dream killers over here.
Right. Running for office is one of the greatest challenges, but greatest rewards that somebody can do, that they're willing to put themselves out there.
Right.
But thinking logically, you know, this is, and having a practical conversation. This is the demographics of this county. This is the demographics of this seat. This is where do you think money's coming from? How do you think this is going to get accomplished? And be able to have those really in-depth conversations. I'm doing it now with the U.S. Senate race, as I'm working on, you know, figuring out who is getting recruited and what does that look like. And so that is going to be important. I will be having.
Do you mean to run against Rick Scott?
Yes.
Okay.
So my hands are very engaged, and because it is so pivotal that we find the right candidate that is going to energize our base, that's going to represent our ideals, and be willing to, you know, throw the punches, because that's what's going to be necessary. So I will be much more engaged on those conversations. And if I am not the right messenger, to make sure that there are right messengers that can go to those specific elections. When it comes to recruiting the candidates, that is also where we're going to be much more engaged. Already have established my campaign program, my internal campaign committee, chair and vice chair. One is chair is Danielle Hawk, who ran for Congress in the central part of our state. If she's older than 33, I would be surprised. She is dynamic. She's awesome. My vice chair is Nikki Barnes, which I'm sure a lot of you know. The two of them together are going to put the state on fire. We are going to have a new municipal victory director, but the part of their job too, with the caucuses, is to go and recruit. making sure that it's the right candidate for the right seat, and that they're given the tools too. Because so many times we get candidates in the race that don't know what they're doing. And get themselves into situations where they're asked from a blogger or some reporter a question that they don't know how to answer. They put their foot in their mouth, and then it hurts all of us.
Right.
And so part of it is recruitment, but part of it is also going to be training and what is necessary on the ground, and making sure that we're also teaching them all issues, because there is not one seat in the state of Florida that is, the demographics is monolithic. Just doesn't exist. And so if you don't have a candidate that understands all of the actual issues that are happening in that demographics in your district, whether it is knowing that parts of South Florida has a huge, Haitian community, and then another part that whether it's a Cuban population or Jewish population, or, basically we are a melting pot, but everybody's issues, they come to the table with a different perspective. And our candidates need to do a better job learning about everybody else in their district.
But they can't sound rehearsed either, right? It's like, we don't need you to, we can't be here just learning about us because you're trying to get elected now, right? So that's part of it too, because some folks don't come off genuine, right? You could tell like they just want to hold this seat. They're going to act like they know all of these things and they're committed and they want to do these things. So that's another thing. Like, yes, you want them to be informed and aware. However, it can't come off like, oh, you just learned all these things in order for you to be able to run for this seat and, give the right answers.
But I agree, but you also have to give a little bit. Like, look, I spent probably in my run for governor probably 10 to 15 hours studying all things Latin America, all things. I mean, I went through training of the history of the rise of Fidel, to what's happening in Colombia, to what's happening in Argentina, and it gave me knowledge and so much, one, to be able to talk intelligently about issues that impact parts of our state because of what's impacting them in their countries. Learning about, what's going on in Haiti and what's going on in Jamaica, and making sure that I have knowledge because it impacts people's, general just understanding of the world and their background of where they come from. But it's also then making sure that it's personalized, that you internalize, like when they say the word socialism, why does that have such a visceral response from the Latin communities? Understanding the background makes you a better person so that you can actually empathize with individuals. And of course, if you're just doing it as rehearsed, then you're not the right candidate either. You got to you got to take it in and feel about it, and I know I've talked to you guys about this before. It's the same thing with a white politician going into a black church. And you sit there and you talk about, typically white politicians talk about two things in the black community: talk about criminal justice reform, and you talk about guns. And that means you don't understand the issues. And that means that you don't understand the community that you're going into. And so it is going to be beholden upon us to make sure that we are educating our electorate, but educating our candidates more so to understand the backstories of how we got here and how do we actually fix these issues.
And so one of the other things too is that we found out that there were some of the Republicans ran unopposed, right? There were no Democrats that, and they got those seats. They got the super majority in Tallahassee right now. And some of them people didn't even have to put up a fight to get that job.
Yep.
So, and some of it may be like folks can't afford to pay the filing fees, whatever. What is it that you can do as chair to assist folks to make sure at the very least, folks don't make it to Tallahassee without an opponent on the Democratic side?
Yep, that is exactly what the mission is. It is making sure that we've got a 67 county plan, that we've got a plan to contest every election for lots of reasons. One, yes, we don't want anybody going without a fight up to Tallahassee. They got to earn their seat, not just walk into it. But the other thing, that it does is it makes you spend money. Because if you are not, I think there was like 60 seats that were not filled in 2022, which is insane. But that means that they then can take that money from those areas and put it to our blue counties. So we've got to make sure that there's candidates there that makes them hold the line in those areas. Two, there are Democrats everywhere. And if you don't have a reason to come out to vote for somebody, you stay home, and it hurts the overall state apparatus.
Absolutely.
And so making sure that we've got candidates there that people can go and vote for. And lastly, is that if you don't have a Democrat in these elections, then the Republican rhetoric and propaganda goes unchallenged.
Unchallenged.
Unchecked.
Completely unchecked. And even though it might be a very red seat, it might be an R+10, that mean that there's still D's there and there's still independents there. Every county, every election has at least almost a third of independents. Those people can go either way. And if they're completely unchecked in their messaging, then we lose ground and opportunities to change the message in that area.
So, since you segue into independence, so I was talking to Sandra a few days ago, and I was like, I'm going to ask Chair Freed, listen, I'm gonna be completely transparent. I've been very disappointed with the Democratic Party and how they've been moving, and I really am teetering on leaving the party and becoming an independent. That is how disappointed.
I'm not doing that. So I'm just letting you know I'm not doing
that.
So I said, well, Chair Freed, I'm going to ask you, I'm like, what are you doing to those? How are you targeting those who are really seriously thinking about, I just don't want to be on the ride no more. I want to get off the ride. I don't want to either or. And that's where I'm at because I'm just not happy. So how are we targeting and what are we doing? What's the messaging for those groups?
I mean, look, the messaging is actually pretty simple. We're showing up again. We're showing up and we're fighting. We're doing this differently. And I'm not going to, pat myself on the back. Name another past chair of the Florida Democratic Party. Right. Stop. Okay. Right. Right. So no one knows who the past chairs are because they haven't been engaged. They haven't, and there's been some great chairs and there's some that are close friends. And so please don't take offense to that. But they're at this moment in time that there needs to be more present and more fight. That you need to see that Democrats are showing up for the fight, that we're coming at, and we're fighting smarter. Our job is not just to go up to Tallahassee and just yell and have press conferences and continue yelling. It means to be strategic. It means that now that the pendulum has swung so far to the right, that it's going to swing back and that we are the ones who are ready to capture it. And so hearing plans and hearing strategies and me being out there and propping up, because we have a lot of electeds and that don't know how to use the media. That's not necessarily their fault. I had a fantastic new representative who I live and die for, who I think is terrific. But she comes up to me probably about a month ago, and she goes, "Hey, I'm an attorney. I'm a consumer rights attorney. I don't know how to do Twitter. I don't know what works or what doesn't work. I don't know how to set up press conferences per se. Can you teach me?" And I think that that's part of where we're going to have to be with our Democratic Party too, is to be lifting up the Democratic leaders that are doing the work on the ground that you don't always hear from. And so it's going to be part of my job is to not only be more present, vocally as chair, but also make sure that our electeds are doing the same thing too. Because the fact of the matter is that Ron DeSantis is allowed to talk about we were talking about infrastructure, all of the money that he is handing out checks to, all of these different areas, knowing that $1 out of $3 that Ron DeSantis is spending is from Joe Biden. And we allowed him to take that narrative because Democrats, after our congressional delegation voted for the infrastructure bill, I don't know of press conferences that happened anywhere in the state of Florida besides the ones that I was doing that said, here's why I voted for the infrastructure bill. This is how much money is coming down to this community. This is how much jobs are being created. This is all the things that we're doing. And so now Ron has been able to take that narrative that he's given out all this money and the Democrats haven't been there. So I think that the message to are the people that are frustrated with the Democratic Party, help us. Instead of walking away, help. And to the question that you were about to ask at the beginning part of Sandra, this is how you help. A couple of things. One, I am asking $5 a month. $5 a month, recurring dollars. $5. It is less than your Starbucks run.
That's what I was going to ask. I was like, how you go? You need to get it. Get them to one cup of coffee.
Get the funding.
$5 a month. $5 a month. If we got 250,000 Democrats across the state to give $5 a month, that's $1.2 million that I get to consistently use in field, get to consistently use in community organizing, consistently be able to use in voter registration. So that's one aspect. Two is go and volunteer if you've got the time, resources, whether it is an hour of being willing to phone bank or to text bank, whether it is if you're willing to knock on doors. We've got to get back on knocking on doors. That is what Democrats have always been known for, is knocking on doors and having that interaction, that persuasive conversation with our voters. We have gotten so lazy with these damn things that people feel so disconnected from their communities. And so if you got, Nikki, somebody coming knocking on your door from the Florida Democratic Party, that you got to have a 15-minute conversation at your front door, you walk away and be like, all right, they're showing back up. Okay, let's give it another shot. Yeah. And that's how it's going to work. And then once you start seeing the victories, and I said before we were on camera that, we've always been, we root for our team. We want the blue team to win. And we say, we didn't win this time, we'll try again next time. Things are so dire right now. It is essential that Democrats are elected, not because we want our team to win, but because we need to protect democracy. We need to protecting rights. Yes. And so we need everybody to wake up, even if you don't agree with us in all of our policies. And I used this analogy earlier today. Somebody was talking to me about just stuff, and they said, we were talking about Joe Manchin, and said, well, would you rather Joe Manchin or Ron DeSantis? Joe Manchin at least votes with us 70% of the time. Ron DeSantis wants to destroy us 100% of the time. And so being able to look at those comparisons is that you're not always going to agree with everything that we stand for. You're not going to agree with everything that we say, but look at the alternative.
Right. Yeah. And so that look at the alternative stuff, like I understand that, but I was on a panel like last week, and I was like, no one wants to hear that anymore. Right. Because one of the things that I think was another failure of 2022 was people a lot of Democrats relied on the fact that the Republicans were so bad, right? Like they really were, but they're like, oh my God, but he's terrible. I'm like, yeah, I know he's terrible, but folks were like, I know that person's terrible, but I need to know what it is that you're going to do. Right. So I think even though they're terrible, we need to focus and talk about what it is that we're going to do. Because I'm even turned off when someone's trying to get me to support them and they're talking bad about their opponent. I'm like, no, you should have enough good things to say about yourself or give me enough reasons to support you that you don't need to tell me all about the negative things about that person, unless maybe if you ask a question and I'll just clarify maybe something that was said. But in terms of like just telling me all the bad things about them and not highlighting what it is that you're going to do, then, I'm not impressed by that. And I think a lot of people aren't impressed by that.
And they're turned off. And that's part of where, I come into play too, is to really train our candidates. And I've said this consistently, and I say this in every one of my speeches, we've got to we know what they do. We know who they are. We got to make sure people know who we are, and to make sure they know that when Democrats take power again, what does that look like? What is on our top of our agenda? Making sure that we're protecting public education, that we're expanding Medicaid, that we are protecting, a woman's right to choose, that we are putting money into infrastructure, that we're putting money into our communities that have been marginalized. There's all these things that and what the good thing is that Leader Driscoll, Fentress Driscoll, has been so dynamic. Yeah. And so she and I have been able to talk and kind of communicate about some of these issues. And what she has been able to do with the House caucus, they are putting forth their agenda. This is the bills, and being able to stand up that it's not, all these, frilly things. It's every one of their pieces of legislation that the Democrats have been fighting for are ones to make people's lives better. And those are the types of issues that, hey, I tried fighting for, all these things. Unfortunately, there's not enough of me in Tallahassee. Some support more Democrats so we can actually get these things accomplished.
And so as we're, sorry, go ahead. No, as we're heading towards 2024, and I think we're really late in the game. We were talking about flipping seats, and I don't know where the numbers are right now, but we certainly want to make sure that we have candidates in the districts that have been cut up by the Republicans when we were doing the map at the time, especially that one district that was cut up and that was predominantly a black district. So what are we looking? How are we looking now? I mean, I know this is kind of we're late in the game, but I'm hoping that there's some tangible things you can tell us of how we're looking in terms of flipping seats and all that other stuff, and what do we need to do to help and bring the momentum and bring in that that fire that we need to get there.
So in all candid, our Senate seats are difficult this round, just like the U.S. Senate seat map is not good. Ours is really difficult. So basically the ones that are up this year, there's not going to be a lot that we're going to be able to flip. I'm just being candid. The maps are just not good. The seats that are coming up, and it was probably planned that way. I mean, they knew how it goes, even in odd years, depending if you're up this year or you're up next year or in 26. So the seat numbers are not good for us. But there are absolutely at least 6 House seats that we're going to be able to flip. Ones that should have never been lost to begin with, but because of such low turnout, we got ourselves into this situation in the House. We're going to be able to be more competitive in some of those Senate seats to start kind of chipping away at the support on the ground. So that's really where we are. There's a couple of seats that we are not only going to flip, but ones that we're going to start to target, because that's also part of it. It's a 10-year plan, that we are seeing seats that might be R+2 that we're not going to be able to win in 24. But if we start to be targeting on voter registration in those specific seats, then maybe come more competitive for 24, but maybe come 26, they're really at play. And so laying that foundation and groundwork has got to happen now that we know what those maps look like, at least from the House and the Senate perspective, as far as going into the next 10 years in those seats and making sure we're planning. When it comes to the congressional delegation, there are, both from my perspective as well as our national friends, are targeting 3 seats in our state as well. 2 in South Florida and 1 in like kind of the Pinellas Pasco area. Still getting clarification on which one in particular they want to target. But so those are 3 congressional seats that are targets. Doesn't mean that we're not going to be playing in every seat, but those are going to be the targets as far as additional resources in order to move forward. But I'm not going to lie. We are in a situation where one of 2 things can happen. One, we know that the turnout is going to be up, like it's a presidential, like the turnout is going to be up. We are never going to have a November 22 again. Like that is just never going to happen. It was the perfect storm on so many different fronts. So one of 2 things could happen. Either one, we do what I'm saying, that we are holding ground, that we're not losing more seats, that we're picking back up some of those seats that we lost, that we're lessening the voter registration gaps, and that we're holding on to, we've got a big race in Miami-Dade County for the mayor, to hold on to Daniela and to make sure we're protecting her. That is a bare minimum. If in fact we do this right and get ourselves organized now, which we are doing, again, I'm operating under a sprint and not a marathon, and we see this tension that is bubbling up in our state, you cannot attack 75% of Floridians and think that you're still going to be successful in elections. That's just not possible. If we do this right and the pendulum swings back faster, there is opportunities, if again, we do this right, to pick up a lot more seats, because the pendulum has swung so much that if you are in a R+1, R+2 seat, and 75% of that district was not in favor of permitless carry or not in favor of a 6-week abortion ban, that +2 starts to kind of look not so +2 anymore, because you might be able to say, did you know that your state senator and your state representative voted for all these pieces of legislation? Mm-hmm. And that also swings the NPAs who have decided to be an NPA. If we target them correctly, there is an opportunity to pick up more seats.
I have a question. So what does 6 seats in the House, what does that do?
It means no longer super minority in the House.
Okay, so then that could affect at least some of the bills that are getting through the House. And then when you say
you're not going to be able to stop them,
you're not going to be able to stop them.
They're still majority, but there is opportunities for additional rules maneuvering that can happen, that can stop things like waiving of rules of reading bills. We can make their lives more difficult.
Okay. And that's a way to start. Well, why is it that you say that there's like the Senate is a no? Like, why is it a no, considering all of the very terrible things that's happening right now? You know, like, I mean, it's just a lot of bad stuff. So why is it such a no?
It's not a no.
We can get that even with all of the bad things that are happening, that people are agreeing is terrible things, that these folks are still confident that they can go and get their job again.
They are confident.
What does that mean?
So I'm not saying that it's a no, but
why can't we get them fired? Like, and I mean, they're doing a real bad job. Like,
they're being highly insubordinate. They have to go.
You know, I just don't know how people are willing to just re-elect folks that's doing a very terrible job, and a dangerous job at that. You know, like, I mean, they're doing things that are really, really dangerous. So how is it that you can't get that person fired?
So I'm not saying no. I mean, of course we're going to fight everywhere. We are fighting everywhere. That there is not a no. I am just being practical that the seats that are up in 24 are some of the stronger red plus seats. So
even though they're on the wrong side of many of the issues,
they've been on the wrong side of many issues.
No, but they're real wrong right now. This is an all-time low. I think, you know, I mean, it's an all-time low. I mean, I'm older, and this is low. This is just pretty low.
That is correct. And that's what I was just saying as far as like the two paths. The two paths are that we stop the bleeding and that we pick up some House seats to at least get out of the supermajority. That is the bare minimum. The maximum is that we've gotten our shit together and that we are targeting these seats with the right message and saying, again, this is what your representative and your senator voted for. You don't agree with any of these things, but we've got to make sure that we are doing our job on the boots on the ground, candidate recruitment, messaging, all the things that we've been talking about. If we package all of that right, yes, we can flip seats. I'm just saying that the Senate maps are more difficult because the seats that are up in 24 are the stronger red seats as opposed to, the potential, more purple seats.
I believe you're going to have a strategy to just get those people to come to their senses, no matter how red the seats are. I'm gonna keep that hope alive. The other thing, the last thing I think I want to talk about is, like, again, in 20, because we got to learn from all of those lessons in 22, because I think 22 had a whole bunch of lessons that I hope people are learning and carrying on and trying to do better from. Was that a lot of the grassroots organizations felt left out. Right. You know, there was a whole bunch of algorithm thoughts with all them information, and a lot of the candidates fell for all of these algorithms that said, oh, you got to do this. You know what I mean? And they weren't talking to and engaging, I think, enough with the grassroots organizations. And the reason why I, Lisa, know in our community why it's important to do with grassroots is because you need to have that trusted voice speaking. So what plan, if any, do you have to engage with more grassroots organization, find ways to have trusted voices be on your team to help them get, more folks involved and give people a reason to leave their house and go out and vote?
Well, and that's exactly what happened last year, that we had a party chair that felt that the grassroots organizations should be part of the party. And so kind of diss them, because saying that this is the work of the party, not the work of these, what we call individual event, IEs, individual expenditures, grassroots organizations. And so we have already been in the mix of having those conversations with those individuals that they're already a seat at the table. Already been doing that. And so making sure they know that they've got a trusted partner here, that I understand and respect that the work that they do on an everyday basis, we need them here. So we are already in those conversations today with those organizations, making sure that they're emboldened, empowered, and that they have a seat at the table with me. And so my table is very large and very large, and making sure that there's enough room for everybody. And so we are doing that. And where areas where, for instance, like the rally in May, we are making sure that all of our coalitions are invited, that there's going to be speakers from most of the coalitions that are going to have a place on the stage. So that is how we're going to continue to show that this is going to be a new day. Because to your exact point is, so many of these organizations are doing the work in the communities all year round, and they are trusted in those communities. And if there isn't a partnership with the Florida Democratic Party, then they're going to tell their organizations, like, I don't know if it's worthwhile. These people don't really represent us, don't really want to listen to us. So that is part of what and just to show you that the difference is on the investment. I was given some pretty high up information from 2018 roughly $54 million was spent from some of these grassroots organizations. 2020, granted 2020 is a presidential, $184 million was invested in Florida.
With who? With grassroots organizations?
Overall, like is a coalition of all of our grassroots groups from across the state.
$184 million was spent where?
2020, all over the state. 2020.
What do you say 2022? What did they spend in
2022? 12.
Okay, that's what I thought, because I was like, it was not no money spent in 2022. Okay.
I was going to say too.
Okay, I was like,
so, again, 18 was 54. 2020, 184. Again, it's presidential year, and so there's a lot more boots on the ground, a lot more money. 2022, 12 million. So
that sounds about right, because there was a lot of frustration because people were being asked to do things and they weren't getting paid, but there were commercials and all kinds of things happening all over the place, but no one was investing in the community to get them out there, to get people to come out and vote. So, okay.
All right, so I just want to recap. So Chair Freed has mentioned unity as one of the parts of her messaging. She also says democracy, freedom, and equality, which I love. And that people like me who are on the fence need to come and help, give our little $5 a month and volunteer. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. And I have to be honest, when Gillum was running, there was people knocking on my door and they really got me engaged. Like they spoke to me for 10 minutes. And I think that if you're reviving that and that's something that you're planning on doing, I am completely 100% all for it. And I think that does make a material difference, especially for those who are on the fence and not knowing which way they're going. 5/7, there's going to be a march in Tampa. I'm assuming that your group will send us some information so we can flash it everywhere and time and date. You said 1 o'clock is going to be a unity rally. I think that is important. I hope that is statewide, that you go from different places and do this unity rally, because I think we need it to kind of bring us all together. I'm excited about that. And I'm also excited about to hear your and see your messaging and your plan for the state of Florida. As well as I do, and as well as Sandra does, how dire we need help in terms of making sure we address these new legislations. Also, give Ashley Moody a run for her money and just stay keeping her in court with these awful legislations. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how all that comes together. I know Sandra was one of the things she kept on saying, we keep Ashley Moody in the courthouse.
She should be sick or she should be tired and just be like, I can't do this. No, really, she should be she should be up here in litigation to the point where she has to call Ron and be like, listen, bro, whatever you're doing, you need to stop it, because we don't have enough AGs in the office to, defend all this litigation that's happening. That's what should be happening now.
Except that, what they're doing is that not only is Ashley having to deal with all this, but he's also hiring outside counsel, his friends from college and from law school. I would love if somebody wants to listen, how much money Ron DeSantis has spent of our money hiring outside counsel to defend these lawsuits on things that are unconstitutional. Because he doesn't care. At the end of the day, he won't care if any of these things get reversed, because he already got his win by having it passed, and he got his press conference, and he got his stories. So he doesn't care. So he's just doling out money to all these law firms, including a law firm that just got started that was with an immediate past Supreme Court justice from Florida. So Supreme Court Justice Lawson just started a firm with some of the other Republicans of Tallahassee.
Not only is he using our money for private attorneys, but he also using our money to bus immigrants from one state to the next.
Involving himself in federal issues, but okay.
Okay. All right. So that's that thing. But yeah, so we are excited, Chair Freed. We really appreciate you coming on here talking to us about messaging, because that's one of our pet peeves. About candidates, quality candidates, as Sandra mentioned, that is extremely important. And making sure that we get back to the real core of democracy and what Democrats are all about. And so we are excited for the future. We want to be part of it, and whatever we can do. We get your newsletter every week. I think we have a newsletter every month or every week. I'll be on it trying to figure out what she want me to do.
And the unity rally stuff was in this past letter.
something like that. Yeah, I did see something like that, but I was just looking to see where I could volunteer. So, because I really want to get in where I fit in, right? So we can make sure that we get the messaging. And so we're really looking forward to it. We hope that we can still kind of touch base with you from time to time. Make sure that we're all on the same page. I know Sandra is working on a few things in her peripheral and all that other stuff, going to meetings, making sure we all on board with stuff. But honestly, to be quite honest, is we are in, like you said, in dire need in the state of Florida. I don't think people realize how these legislations are chokeholds. I mean, there's voting legislation that's on now. There's legislation against, 6-week ban. You have all these legislations, and his woke, quote unquote, he don't even know what that means, but he on it all the time. But he on this woke thing, this whole woke thing or whatever. And it really it further disenfranchises the disenfranchised group. Yep. And so I don't think people realize that, but we're happy that you are at the helm. We're happy that you're present, and we're happy that you're engaged, because the last one, we didn't even get a letter saying that he left.
Oh, he wrote a book. He wrote a book about all the reasons why he left. So.
We didn't get that to afterwards.
Did we have to buy the book, or he was giving it out for free?
Yeah.
I don't know, because I didn't see it. But no, but thank you. So, because a lot of things I went through my little list and my little checklist, and I did talk about the things that are important. The next conversation we can have it could be on issues, because right now we need to focus on the candidates, making sure people don't get run unopposed, figure out how we're going to get them there. We'll work on the messaging, but you also have to have the right candidate to give that message, because it's you have a lot of work, and I'm very confident that you're going to be able to do it, and you're going to get surround yourself with the right type of folks to make this happen, because it needs to be a team. It's absolutely like a team effort. And I'm excited. Thank you very much, and I'm excited to see what we're going to be able to do in 24. And it starts now, like you said, it's a sprint.
We own it. We got to get on it. So listen, 2024 is right around the corner. We hope to see all the new candidates, and we hope to really have a conversation. Chandra and I are always willing to talk to candidates, but we really want to see messaging in action. And we hope that as we move forward, these several months coming up, because it's going to really get heated up soon.
Yeah, and we need to people need to understand that the laws don't have to stay this way, right? The same way that they can get repealed in 24. So
they sure can.
Put people in there that's willing to do that. You know what I'm saying? So they don't have to stay. The same way he signed them in, the next one could sign it out. So we definitely need to.
Yes, and vote. I saw Carolyn. Yes, we need to make sure that people know vote by mail. Everybody's been kicked off. Welcome to the new Republican Party. Kicked everybody off every 2 years. So if you do not have your vote by mail ballot, you've got to go and re-request it. So everybody every 2 years now has to go back on and ask for your vote by mail.
He's doing a lot of things. I work for a school, and we're part of a union, and they can't they can't automatically deduct our union dues anymore, right? So it's
everybody. It's everybody. He is attacking our unions. He is attacking our
He's attacking Disney. What poor Disney? Disney don't have minded Disney business. Why? I don't understand.
He's losing that. He's getting desperate now because he's losing that Disney fight, and now he's just going to get stupid. But we don't want to talk about that. What we want to do is let folks know that because these things were out there, they can absolutely be repealed. So we need to make sure we get good folks in there to do that. Because again, sometimes people don't think about unions. I work at a college, and who thought that would have been an issue? Now I got to fix, and I'm the worst. I got to remember to pay a bill. I'm one more bill I got to try to figure out how to pay. Just take it out. And so these are the kind of things that he's doing that we can, if we do the right thing, get the right folks in there, we can get rid of all of this crazy legislation that's really affecting our lives in all different types of ways. So thank you so much.
Chair Reed, can you please send us the link to do the $5 a month so we can share it on our page?
Yes, I will definitely do that. I'll make sure that you get that. It's basically, I'm going to put it right into, let me see what chat I can put it into.
You put it on Facebook, YouTube, it'll go to all of them as long as you post it. You can post it here, and you can post it right here in this link, and it'll post on all the other ones.
It's basically for the Florida Democratic Party website. So it's floridadems.org. It's floridadems.org, and then there's a donate button, and you can do it right there on the site. $5 recurring, and that will take care of it. And that way too, we know how to budget every single month, knowing how much money is coming in that month. It's a lot easier. Same thing when you get your salary, you know how much to budget because you know how much you're getting that month. That's exactly what we're asking for.
And we only need 250,000. So if it's 250,000, would that be like, I'm not a math.
1.25 million
per month? Would that be per month? Okay. We got to do it, y'all.
We got to do it, guys. We got to do it. All right. So we're going to let Chair Free go because she's a busy woman and she has other places to be. But we are so excited that you came here and had you gave us some great information, some great groundwork to work on. And we are heading for victory. It may not be a full slush.
We're not speaking no negativity in the air. It's going to be what it needs to be.
It's going to be what it's going to be. And we're going to make it.
We're going to get what we can. Yes. Yeah, we're going to get something.
We're going to get there.
We're going to get there. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
See you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. So
all right, good night. Thank you.
All right. That was awesome. I like it. We got our marching orders. So I need to make sure I'm going to hop on there and get my reoccurring $5 to go now. And then
give them 10. Give them 10.
All right, I'll do 10. That's fine. Yeah, 10 is fair. I think 10 is fair. 10, do 10 because $5 can't even buy you Starbucks.
You know what I mean? Give them 10. We're gonna look out for one of them other people. So now they only need 249,000 other people.
Yeah, we go. Yeah, we're gonna cover somebody else. I'm
gonna do 10, and that's gonna be 248,000. So those of y'all that can do 10, go ahead and do 10. So we don't need it from 250,000 people. And if we get 250,000, that's just a little bit extra to do just a little bit more.
Right. So I got my marching orders. I'm gonna go do my reoccurring for $10. I'm gonna make sure that I look to see if I could do some volunteering. But volunteering can be easy. You could do the texting and the phone banking. Easy.
Yeah. But the other thing is that you got to know who you are, right? So I've done phone banking before. It's not my thing. I will text all day. I got on the phone. The phone is not me and partly because I have a job where I talk all day. I teach, I talk all day. I'm a lawyer, I talk all day. I don't need no more. And I do this, I'm talking. I don't want to talk no más, okay? So I can do the texting and I will do the reoccurring. I do it for the Broward Democratic Party. I'll do it here. And that's going to be my thing. I don't want to be in a situation where I have to talk anymore. But know yourself, and whatever you decide to commit to, just commit to that, and it's all appreciated.
I do texting, and I'm gonna do the reoccurring. That's all I can do. I can't be on the phone with people.
I can't. I talk enough.
Very difficult for me. I hate begging people for money. I don't like doing it.
Listen, I ain't too proud to beg for a good cause. I'm not too proud to beg for a good cause.
It's awkward for me. That's all. It's just an awkward thing for me. It's awkward for me. I feel uncomfortable doing it. Not because I don't want to
beg for a good cause. I would just say that, but I just don't want to. I don't need another talking unit. I don't need another talking gig.
Right. No. I get it. But this was great. I'm excited. I took some notes on some of the things she talked about. I think that's something we can kind of mull over next week when we go for our next week's show. For those new people who don't know us, thank you for visiting. We encourage you to come back next week. We always have great conversations. We talk about all things politics, but not just in Florida, in other states too, because other states, does affect us.
Shout out to the Justins, okay? They
shout out to the Justins in Tennessee.
Justin Jones and Justin Pearson.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Justins, honey. They out here
holding that energy in Florida.
You remember when she said hold the line? Now those brothers over there are holding.
We need some of that energy in Florida.
We need a lot of that energy in Florida. We need that energy everywhere because they're respectful and they know their job and they know legislation. So we need that everywhere, and they're fighting for the people. They're not fighting for themselves. They're fighting for the people. So we need representation that way. So shout out to the Justins, loving what they're doing over there in Tennessee. We look forward to seeing some of these grassroots here. We get some of these Justins over here. Hopefully that spirit and that energy is permeating throughout the country, and hope that we get there.
And that's a young folk engagement piece that we need to keep going, right? Because, these young folks, just even on the social media front, some of them have like 30,000 friends. I'm like, really? I think I got 3. You know what I'm saying? But you know, but they can get message. They can get the message out there, and if they find somebody they want to support, they really can make a difference. So yes, we definitely need, you know, like that young folks.
Don't sleep on Gen Z, honey. Don't sleep on those. Don't sleep on those.
You know, I don't understand none of that. I don't understand none of that. The Gen Z, Latinx, Generation Y. I don't know it. So.
X. We're Generation X.
I'm older than you, so I don't know. I might be something else.
You're still in my group, though.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, but the younger group, there are a lot of them that are progressive, and I really think that we need to kind of uplift those and really kind of support and get them to be on board. Because
and even if they're progressive, they still got the same problems. So that's all we need to keep letting them remind them of, right?
All right. So make sure you guys request your mail-in ballots, because Ms. Hardy is correct. You need to request them again. I did my request.
I did it already. Yeah, I did it too.
So make sure you do that. So come back and see us next week. We thank you all for visiting. And please go on our page, like, share, and subscribe. Like all our videos. If you haven't had a chance to see what we do, check out our videos on YouTube. And we'll see you all next week. Next week is every week on Wednesday. So we'll see you all next week.
All righty. Bye-bye.